Hi, my name's Kristen and I'm an educator for Shear. This is my model Kelly and I'm going to teach you how to recreate her long bob style today. So as I'm sure you know, there are many ways to cut a bob, and Kelly's is a modern textured style that still has a blunt look to the perimeter. So we're going to go ahead and get her shampooed, and then I will show you in more detail how to recreate this look. So we went ahead and found where Kelly parts her hair, and then we're going to go ahead and finish our sectioning by doing a headband part from ear to ear across the top of her head, sectioning from front to back. With a long bob, it's very important to figure out how your client regularly styles their hair. If they're always wearing their hair straight, you want to be mindful of where the shoulders are. So you need to decide whether you're going to keep the perimeter below the shoulder or above the shoulder. If you hit right at the shoulder and your client wears their hair straight, it's going to flip outwards. And if they wear their hair curled, that's really not going to be a factor. Sometimes Kelly wears her hair straight and other times she curls it. So we are going to keep hers below the shoulder since she does wear her hair straight sometimes. Now it's very important to have your client tip their chin down before you cut the length so that you don't have extra hair popping out, making your perimeter uneven. We're going to start with our first cut here in the middle, and we're removing about 1 inch. We're going to point our fingers in the direction that we want to cut the hair to create a guide. So we will be angling our fingers downward since we are going to create a little bit of an A-line shape in her haircut. For her perimeter, we are cutting with the Shear West 6th. This is a great shear for wet or dry hair cutting. I'm going to go ahead and drop my next section and continue following this pattern up the head. We're taking our sections at about a 1 inch thickness, so that way we can really see a strong foundation of our guide and clean up those hairs going up the head. So now we're going to connect the sides to the back of the haircut. So I'm going to turn Kelly and have her look to her right. That way this back section can come over her shoulder so we have a clean line to cut. So we're going to continue that same finger angle that we had in the back along the sides. We started with a 1 inch section above the ear. So we're going to pull this down, but not with too much tension because we don't want to create a hole near the ear. You can take your comb and lightly press against the ear to release that tension, and then go ahead and follow the same angle, continuing from the back. We are going to continue taking 1 inch sections up the head and follow the same pattern. I'm now going to continue the same process to the right side of her head. So I'm going to have her turn to look over her left shoulder and continue with 1-inch partings up the head, following the same finger angle from the back. And again, we are moving up the head with 1-inch partings. You'll notice as you start to go further up the head, her hair is already cut into this shape, so there won't always be hair to cut as we get higher up the head. We've now moved back to the back of Kelly's head where we're going to start her layering. We are going to be cutting her layers in the back at a 90-degree angle, coming straight back from the head. We're going to be starting with a clean parting at the top of the head and determining where we would like those layers to start. So we're going to go ahead and pull that down, and we're going to take about 1 inch off of Kelly's layers. We're going to be point cutting to create a soft look throughout the layers so that we have a lot of texture. After we've cut our top guide, we're going to create a section down the middle back of the head, and this is where we're going to start our 90-degree layering. So that hair is coming straight out from the top of the head, and we're going to go in and point cut. And drop the beginning of our guide and pick up that next piece and continue to follow the shape of the head. We're going to continue with vertical sections and pull straight out from the head and straight back like you're pulling against a wall, and continue to point cut these sections at 90 degrees. We are point cutting, but we are going to go in and texturize her once we get her dry. I like to texturize dry so that I have more control, but this is going to create less texturizing work for us in the end when we're finished. Right here you can see that I'm letting that perimeter drop out because I don't want to recut my perimeter. We also want to maintain the blunt look of the perimeter, so everything from the occipital down is falling out of that 90-degree section. I'm going to go ahead and move over and take our next vertical section. And again, we're pulling straight back like we're pulling the hair against a wall. This is also going to ensure that we don't create a hole behind the ear. So if we were to move over this way, we would be taking off all of that hair that connects. So we're going to stay straight back and continue meeting our guide at 90 degrees. We're going to go ahead and continue Kelly's layering on the right side of her head. So we're going to take another vertical section, this time going towards the right. And we're going to pull straight out to 90 degrees. You can see our guide right there. We're going to go ahead and continue point cutting, remembering to keep the hair pulled straight back like you're pulling it against a wall.
Acting like a bozo, like I've never seen the ocean before.
now completed with the back of Kelly's haircut, and I'm gonna go ahead and kind of mess that up so you guys can see that texture in there. You can see these layers starting to form, but yet she still has that strong perimeter. Now we're going to go ahead and connect Kelly's layers on her sides to the layers in the back. We're still going to be cutting at a 90-degree angle, but we aren't going to be going at the traditional 90 straight out from the top of the head because we are cutting off of her part. So the first thing we're going to do is start by taking a thin piece from the back as our guide and meeting that with a thin section from the sides and over directing back since we are trying to maintain length at the front of the haircut. We're going to be starting by taking a little section from the back so that we can find our guide and adding with a little section from the sides so we can cut the new layers. We've completed this side of Kelly's haircut, and you can start to see that texture and movement forming throughout these layers. We're going to go ahead and mimic what we did on this side and bring it over here. So we have our headband parting so that we can see where to find our guide from the back section, and we're going to join a small piece from the back to a small piece on the sides and continue the same layering pattern that we did on the other side. So we've joined the section from the back and the sides together, and we're pulling that out still at the 90 degrees, finding our guideline and continuing to match that up with point cutting. As I mentioned before, we are point cutting as opposed to blunt cutting because we want a textured look throughout her layers. We want the most bang for our buck here with layering because we don't want to add a lot of layers, but we want our layers to have movement. We are going to go in and texturize her once we get her dry, but for now we are going to keep it as soft as possible by point cutting.
And it just might be the only thing that
This side of Kelly's haircut is now complete, and you can start to see the shape that it's beginning to take. We're now going to go ahead and get her dry, and then we will show you how we're going to texturize her to finish the cut. So here's Kelly's haircut dry before we start texturizing. We are going to switch over to our barbering shear to do some deep point cutting throughout the back section of her layers. We're going to start with the same sections that we used when we were cutting her layers. We're going to take thicker sections for this. Since we aren't trying to be very precise with this, we're just trying to create a little bit of disheveled texture. So we're going to pick up that section. Keep your fingers down just a bit because you don't want to cut your fingers. This is a longer shear than the West 6th and a little thinner, so it's great for deeper point cutting. I'm going to use texturizing shears on her in a little bit, but the reason that I am choosing the barbering shear for now is that I don't want to create a line where I have texturized her hair. We want everything to be very soft, and if you go too heavy with a texturizer in one spot, you can leave lines. Now we're cutting straight in when we do this. Any slight twisting to either side will take out more hair. It's best to start slow with this until you get more comfortable, and then you can increase your speed so that you don't cut yourself or take out too much hair. We're not removing any length with this technique, we're only removing bulk.
Seen the ocean before, but I have swam in it, and it just might be the only thing that
So there you can see how we've created a little bit more softness, and you can't see where those layers start and stop. I'm now switching over to the slider, and I've sectioned her off just above the occipital. What we're going to do with slide cutting is create a little bit more movement without taking layers shorter. So this is also going to give her some volume, and it's going to take away from that triangle shape that you can sometimes get with a blunt cut bob. So when I slide cut her hair, I'm going to be taking thin sections, and I'm going to be doing a open and closing motion, but I'm not going to close the shear all the way. And I'm going to slide it down the hair shaft while I do that. These shears are specifically meant for slide cutting only. The way that the blade is beveled helps to push the hair, which is what you want to create with slide cutting, and it helps create a smooth slide. In addition to slide cutting giving the hair a lot of texture and movement, this is also a great way to thin out your client's hair who have really thick and bulky hair without leaving harsh lines from the texturizing shears by taking them up too high. I've moved on to Kelly's side, and I have her sectioned off at the parietal ridge. We're going to start slide cutting here as opposed to down by the ear because we're mostly using our slide cutting here for volume.
be the only thing that
This is more of a visual technique, so this doesn't need to be done on every piece of the hair, just where you see weight. In her bang area, we're going to direct this piece back because we don't want her hair to fall in her face, and we're going to slide cut back and away from her face.
going swimming, I love going swimming. Swimming makes me feel good, yeah, and I feel better, and I feel better.
So now you can see, after we've slide cut this piece, how soft those layers are. Again, we have Kelly sectioned off at the parietal ridge, and we're going to mimic the same technique that we had used on the other side to finish this side. Remember to just slightly open and close the shear. You don't want to close this all the way. The more you close, the more hair you will remove. Kelly is pretty well texturized at this point. What we're going to do is go in with our texturizing shear and do just a little bit of beveling on the perimeter to help reinforce tucking under instead of kicking out. So we're going to continue to take those same vertical sections that we took when we were cutting her layers, and we're going to focus this texturizing technique right on the perimeter. We don't want to remove too much weight because we want to still keep a heavy line at the perimeter. But to reinforce tucking under, With our texturizing shears, instead of going in straight, we're going to go in at an angle, and that's going to help tuck that hair in towards the head. Here's our finished look straight, and we are going to go ahead and put in some texturized waves to really show off all of the texture that we put in her haircut. So here is our finished product. We added some textured waves for a more messy, lived-in look to really bring out all the texturizing that we put in her haircut. And I hope you guys liked this video. I hope this was helpful for you. Check out the rest of our videos, and you can see all of the shears that I used to create this look in our online store.